Namato Ratana Tayasa. May I pay homage to Triple Them, the Buddha, the Dhamma, and the Sangha. My respect goes to my parents, my teachers, and all well-wishers. So today is Wednesday 13th of May 2020. And this is Ajahn Sujan from Varapunya Meditation Center, Aberdeen, Scotland. As usual, you're all coming and listening to me on this night. So thank you, everyone. Hi, everyone. Hello, Margaret, Danmaya, Sharla, and everyone. So today is another miserable day. Sometime you will get the hailstones, another time windy, another time just the sunshine. I went out to look at it. If possible, would like to go and go online from outside because the weather, beautiful scenery. But when I went out, it's pretty cold and windy, and there is there is a possibility that any time hailstone will come back again. So hi everyone, hi Punam, hi, and hi Colin. So today I have got a few messages from different people who are listening the talk and evening sessions, and some also express their concern about their neighbors and their friends, those who are getting really frustrated and sort of disturbed kind of thing, and also expressing how can we help. And in the meantime, there are other messages also coming through, appreciation of this talk and evening meditations that have helped to deal or to deal during this time of lockdown. And also I've been practicing yoga for some times, and it's been a couple of times I was online, and there is a Margaret said that she's also following that yoga as well. So looking at that, probably from tomorrow I may go online while we are practicing yoga as well, just to affiliate and encourage you to move yourself, and then whatever you can move, you can, but those moves, if you cannot do, then do not stretch yourself, it may hurt you. Hello Prani, hello John. So in this time of the very anxious and stressful time, we're just doing different activities to help and to be with you all. I also got messages in saying, requesting for the masks, and we still have a few left. Those who haven't got and is still thinking to have one masks, then just let me know, and then write your name and address, and I will post it for you. So this is the mask. And as we know, particularly in England, lockdown is eased. You can go out, but you are asked to wear a mask. So we have still few left, and if you would like to have, just let me know. And those who haven't got, after you have given me addresses and haven't received it, again just let me know, so we can make sure there is a spare left for you to collect, or maybe reposting again. So, and this is the message from the center. And also thank you every support that you have given to the center and the monks during this lockdown time. And center also providing some supports and help to the community as well in different forms. We're also giving apart from this Facebook live teachings, we are also running some Zoom program as well. And so this is just the information I would like to give you this. And we also plan to have this renovation of the barn in this summer once the B&Q opens, and we will go and order the items. So this is an ongoing plan, so we will have it soon. No sound, huh? Is it true that there is no sound? Let me know. Only Prani or John or anyone, everyone hear me? Just a quick test, since the John texts me saying no sound. Can you hear me? Margaret, Colin, Ishani, Charala, or anyone, just let me know. Good sound here, Bante. Okay, that's right. Maybe John has got the problem with the sound volume. Okay, right. So if you hear me, Sarala, then I think the sound. Okay, good. So the sound is going on then. Only problem probably with the volume in John's mobile phone. Right. Okay, so I got a question about what is the position of the Buddha, and I was pondering what does that position mean, and I was contemplating that word position, and after I have pondered, I come to realize that definitely means what is the status of the Buddha in Buddhism. So a Buddha is basically a form of a title or an achievement. Once a person has achieved that state is known as the Buddha. So Buddha wasn't the new form or new things during the time of Buddha or before the Buddha in ancient India. Those ascetics and spiritualists were again striving or working towards to be the Buddha. So it was very familiar word during the time of the Buddha to be the Buddha, but no one knows how to be the Buddha. And that's the reason that all the ascetics practices or even meditation, different form of a meditation, were practiced during the time of the before the Buddha, simply to be the Buddha. So that's why the word Buddha simply means one who knows. And this historical Buddha, after he became the Buddha, he recalled his previous lives and told that he had lived so many previous lives, making resolution to be the Buddha by verbally, by action, and also he was someone told him that he will be the Buddha in the future, like that. So fortune telling or something like that, but a future that he will be the Buddha in that case. So, and in the meantime, he even himself with wisdom, and sometimes he has thought that he mentally wanted to be the Buddha for such a long time, and then he physically again acted open to be the Buddha and verbally again he told in front of the wisest, the noblest nobles, that he wanted to be the Buddha so he can help the entire beings. And with that eons of rebirth again and again, he was perfecting his perfections known as the 10 paramitas. But in terms of to be the Buddha, he had to complete 30 paramitas. So the basic paramitas, and then the intermediate and the higher paramitas, and that's basically is learning to give away, learning to practice the silas, and so there are 10. And after he had completed these perfections, and this is again what this is my understanding, that we all human beings are born as a humans in this world, or in this world simply to perfect our perfections, to be liberated in the future births. So in every life, or even this life, if you look at your own behavior and your own mental tendencies or temperaments, you can realize that mentally you are focusing on one particular thing, being kind or being generous or being contented or being balanced, equanimous mind, or ability to let it be. So these are some of the qualities that we possess in our day-to-day life, and that I will take it as we are perfecting that perfections in this life, and that is again earning the points to be liberated in the future. But if we pursue a lot, then there is a possibilities of shortening this lifespan in this samsara. There's a life, birth and a death, and we will be attaining this the enlightenment. So that's the Buddha. He was doing that for such a long period of time, and at the time when he became the Buddha, he was able to liberate himself. So the historical Buddha here, he was born and lived for 29 years current day in Nepal, 2563 plus 80 years ago. Okay, so basically the roughly 623 BC. So he was born, and historically it's proved, and there are monuments and journals that proved to be the real person or human being lived and who became the Buddha. And again, I think this morning we were having a conversation with Ajahn Pira about the Buddha's existence and how relevant he is in terms of the Buddha, the religious leaders in the world that we have. Probably Buddha's existence can be proved historically, archaeologically, and also from the journals so clearly compared to any other religious teachers or the religious leaders, like let's say Jesus, or let's say Muhammad, like that. And in the meantime, he was the one who lived very long time after he began his journey to teach Buddhism to the people, for 45 years, whereas in other religion or other religious faiths stayed only for a couple of years. And again, during their staying, their lifetime, the way they're promoting or the way they're preaching were very conflicting with one another, and creating the crisis or creating the violence in between one another. So there wasn't, although teaching the peace messages, but there were always some form of a violence introduced. in the religions, whereas in Buddhism, while Buddha was alive, there wasn't any form of so-called conflict when he was preaching or creating any violence, but he was preaching and sharing his knowledge with peaceful mind and peaceful and harmoniously in the societies for 45 years. And when we look at the religious teachers, other religious teachers, we can see that there are always violence involved, and even the last moment of their death is still there are some form of disputes and violence involved. Whereas the Buddha, when he passed away, there was so silent, just lying down, and then he passed away. So that's why Buddha became one of the in my understanding, became one of the great religious leaders who didn't involve with any violence, and as well as didn't die quickly, but stayed for 45 years. And this fact we can prove by historically, archaeologically, and some journals that have been written, and also the remains that is still there to prove. So he was the Buddha. But when he talked about the Buddha, there was a story that after he became enlightened, and he was on the way to teach the 5 ascetics, on the way when he was sitting under the Bodhi tree, one ascetic came, his name Upaka. He met to the Buddha while Buddha was just resting on the way under the tree. When he saw, this ascetic saw him, the serenity of his face and the serenity and the calmness of him, he thought that he probably a deity, or he probably a yaksha, or he probably not a human, a serpent, and like that. So he went and asked. First he asked him whether he was a deity or not, or the god or not. And then Buddha simply said, Brahmin, I am not a god. And then he further asked whether he was a yaksha. And then Buddha again replied, I am not a yaksha either. And then again Brahmin asked whether he was a naga. So naga basically means a serpent, or the mystic serpent and holy serpent that well respected during the time of the Buddha. And even nowadays in Asia, in most part of the Asia, still respect the serpent in different forms. So then the Brahmin, he asked whether he was a serpent, and the Buddha said no. And then he further asked, are you a human? And the Buddha said, no, I am not a human in the sense that you think. And then this Brahmin asked him, who are you? Then the Buddha simply said, I am awakened. And here confidently he was expressing that he is the Buddha, which simply means not a human in a human form. He, as a human, we are conditioned to the greed, hatred and delusion, whereas the Buddha simply means he had not involved with the greed, hatred and delusion. He had completely eliminated or extinguished these 3 kilesas, the greed, hatred and delusion. As a result, he became the suprahuman, that not ordinary human. So that's how this is the Buddha. And despite of that, Buddha, despite of he became such a important figure in Buddhism, Buddha never put himself as a figure that one should pay respect to him for any other reasons apart from to cultivate your own development. When he was in a deathbed, so-called in English terminology, but in a Buddhist terminology it's called Mahaparinibbana. During Mahaparinibbana time, when the disciples asked him who would be the successor of the Buddhism or his teaching or dispensation, then the Buddha simply said that all the teachings and the rules, and it's called Dhamma Vinaya, the teachings that he had preached, that would be your teacher, that would be your leader. So he didn't point it out any particular person or any individual person, but he gave the teachings as your refuge, as your leader, or as your called a sasada, means the religious leader. So in that case, he was simply giving authority to the teachings rather than authority to himself or any particular person. And this is the case why in Buddhism, in particular in Theravada tradition, it will be emphasized more on the teachings rather than his life himself. So Buddha's status in this case, in position in this way, as a great teacher who had taught the teachings, and we respect, or the Buddhist will respect to the Buddha as the great teacher who had taught us the path to find the liberation, but who not preaching him as an idol god or a person who is a god or the god who will save us in that way. So the position of the Buddha is a teacher, a great teacher who had given us this path, and we pay respect to the Buddha out of gratitude that he had given this such a great teachings to us. So, and that's how the status of the Buddha here in the form. And if you look at in around, probably one of the most printed religious leaders' picture in the world is the Buddha, and then one of the most sold out statues, religious statues, would be the Buddha. And it doesn't mean that you have to be a Buddhist to have a statue of the Buddha. Anyone who would love for the peace and harmony and a sense of feeling of a peace in their heart, they could have the Buddha at home, whether he is Muslim or Christian or Hindu, whatever. There is no objection at all. So Buddha is simply a figure, remind us the peace and also the path that we can follow to find the great peace and liberation in the future. And there are three types of the Buddhas. One type of the Buddha is the Buddha himself, who worked hard for many lives in order to be the Buddha. And this type of the Buddha, according to the legends, says that only we can find after many years later. So there won't be two such Buddhas in one time. And we are very fortunate to have to be born during this one of the Buddha's time, and we got an opportunity to learn the teachings and practice. So this is the first Buddha. It's called a Samma Sambuddha, self-awakened Buddha. And the second Buddha is called a Pacceka Buddha, or that Pacceka Buddha again, a self-taught and self-enlightened, but he won't come and teach anyone. He is a self-liberated person. So he had eradicated all the greed, hatred and delusion, and he is liberated, but he will not teach to anyone. And that is the second type of the Buddha. And the third type of the Buddha, called the Savaka Buddhas. Savaka Buddhas simply means disciples who have heard or listened the teachings of the Buddha and applied those teachings into their lives, and then after they have applied, and then they become liberated. So after they liberated, they are known as the Buddha too, but called as the Savaka Buddha. So that's why the Buddha simply means one who have achieved the enlightenment. Doesn't matter who. but the categories depends on the qualities and efforts one has made. So we are also a Savaka, but not yet the Buddha. Savaka simply means the disciple. We are also following the teachings of the Buddha, but we are not enlightened yet. The very moment when we become enlightened, we are also become the Buddha. So that's why there is a saying that we all have this Buddha nature. Yeah? So we all have a Buddha nature, only waiting to blossom. When everything comes together, this Buddha nature will just blossoms, and that moment you will be the Buddha as well. So this is the status of the Buddha in this form, that there are 3 types of the Buddhas, and then we keep the Buddha, historical Buddha, as the person who taught us as a teacher. Having said that, there are many Buddhas in the past before this Buddha, and there will be many Buddhas in the future. As long as there are beings exist in the world, in this entire universe, and this universe doesn't mean just this one universe that we know. Buddha talked about 10,000. One of the suttas simply said millions of world system. So there are so many universe out there. So the Buddhas will never be finished. There will be continuously one who had liberated themselves, they become a Buddha. So continuously it's going on. But we are very fortunate to have this opportunity to be born in this time of the Buddha's dispensation is still there, and we had opportunity to learn the way to liberate ourselves and free ourselves, at least perfecting our perfections to be free in near future, hopefully. So I offer this as a reflection talk for tonight on the position of the Buddha, and I hope you understand the status of the Buddha as not the God, or not the son of the God, or not the messenger, but he was a human being, but he had transformed himself with his own action to be the superhuman and a great teacher who also taught every one of us, or every beings, to be free. If his message simply is that if you follow these maps, you will be liberated and you will be like him too. And we respect, the Buddhists respect him in a form of a teacher rather than the God or the son of the God or the messenger. So in this case, again, there are 3 Buddhas: the Samyek Sambuddha, the self-awakened Buddha, and then the self-awakened but unable to teach the Buddha, and then the last Buddha, the disciples, those who after followed the Buddha's teachings become enlightened. So this is the status of the Buddha for tonight, and thank you everyone for listening, coming back and listening again, and we'll come back tomorrow at 6:30 again. If you cannot make it for the talk, I would invite you to come for the meditation at 7:30. But if you can, tuning in for the talk and then chanting and then the guided meditation. So until then, thank you very much and good night. May the Buddha bless you and stay tuning in. If you are not tuning in, then good night. See you tomorrow. Thank you, Colin. Thank you, Sarala. Thank you, Pat. Thank you, everyone. Thank you. Shortly join with us for the chanting.